I'm Sam Jacob, and I'm head of Studio Jacob here at Angewandte. And I have an office in London, architecture and design office, called Sam Jacob Studio. So it's a little bit confusing. Um, uh, I guess my work with my own office is a lot to do with cultural projects. The key thing for the studio here is really to think about the question of architecture and representation. For me, it has a lot of like really significant aspects to it, and it's a very useful way to frame, how we think of architecture, how we make architecture, and how architecture performs in the world. As architects, we make representations of architecture, drawings, models, give them to someone else, and they make a building. But we can also think of buildings as things which are forms of representation themselves. The way we think of a drawing, the way we think of a model, and the way we think of a building might be much closer together than we normally imagine. Like if we think about like who, what, and how. Who is represented, what is represented, and how is it represented? The who, you could say, is kind of a political, social idea of like who is included, who is excluded, who is it for, who is it by, all of those kinds of questions. What could be, let's say, symbolism, it could be language, it could be like what is the thing which the building like represents? And finally, how is it represented? So that means, I guess, like things about technique, questions of like how do you build, what do you build from? And the ways in which all of those kinds of questions and design decisions like inform the final product. If we think about architecture through that lens of representation, I think it gives us a very gives us a way of having a through line that we can take all the way from the beginning of a project to its use in the world. Just as we can also say that architecture as representation is a through line, from it as a tiny sketch on the back of a napkin, through to beautiful drawings of it, through to technical documentation, and then through to the building itself as a form of representation. So working with the students in Studio Jacob, a lot of what I do is try to set framework within which students can develop their own approaches, kind of bringing together different forms of design language, hybridizing, combining, and then seeing what that might produce. On a kind of cultural level, that's about like different kinds of taste regimes, you could say. On a formal level, it's about how do you bring like literal different aspects, objects together and synthesize them into something new. And on a conceptual level, it's really like giving students a certain kind of agency through borrowing, through stealing, through recombining, which allows them to both experience the world, look at the world, and find their own ways of engaging with it. We don't try to mimic, let's say, some more scientific forms of research. At the moment for us, the design itself is the research, like embodied in the things, the ways, the things we make, the ways we make them, etc., is our questions and possibilities. We're not trying to write an academic treatise on the past or the everyday. We're trying to engage with them and to find the ways that they can inspire us to force design to become something. And that's what the real aim is, that design is the thing. And one of my jobs is to promote different forms of conversation. So I think it becomes something which is far less top down, where you're taught to be in the image of your teacher. 3-year master's program, I think, gives a very different opportunity because it means that we can make mistakes. That creates, let's say, a space for students to mature themselves and find their own direction in a way which a typical master's perhaps doesn't. It's really fantastic how international the student body is. That makes the conversation sometimes challenging because we're not all coming from the same place. We can't make the same assumptions that these things are important or these are the values that we share. So it means that conversations sometimes become more surprising. So multiple experiences, multiple kind of cultural identities and cultural backgrounds produces a much more interesting discussion. Vienna's position geographically in the world has traditionally has been between, you know, this culture and that culture, and that I think continues, and it's really important, I think, for for thinking about architecture. It makes it a great place to think about what architecture can do for an increasingly diverse, increasingly cosmopolitan world.